It started like any quiet roadside stop, thick Georgia air, pine trees swaying slow, a GPS glitch, and a man pulling over to reset his route. But within minutes, that silence turned sharp. A white deputy stepped out of her cruiser, one hand on her holster, the other already judging. What she didn't know was this: the black man she just cuffed wasn't just a driver. He was a 3-star general. And the call he was about to make would change everything. Before we dive into this true story of restraint, exposure, and justice, take 1 second to like this video, subscribe for more real stories, and tell me, where are you watching from, and what time is it there? You won't want to miss what happens next. General Carlton Hayes had driven Highway 280 more times than he could count. The stretch between Albany and Americus was familiar: low trees, cracked road paint, and small-town signs leaning into the wind. That morning, he wasn't in uniform. No medals, no stars, just a man in slacks and a plain polo shirt, driving alone with a secure military phone that had just lost signal. He saw a gravel pull-off, for miles past Ellaville, and decided to stop, nothing more than a pause to reorient his GPS. Then came the sound: crunching tires behind him. He glanced at the mirror. A beat-up Lee County cruiser. No siren, but the lights spun like judgment. A tall white woman in mirrored aviators stepped out, hand already resting on her holster. She didn't approach cautiously. She didn't ask questions. She tapped his window hard. License and registration. Carlton rolled it down halfway. "Afternoon, officer." "What are you doing out here?" she snapped. "Pulled over to check my GPS," he replied calmly. "Where you headed?" He read her name tag. Wilburn. Her tone wasn't curious. It was something colder. Like she didn't ask for answers. She expected control. Carlton spoke clearly, evenly. "Just correcting my route, ma'am." But she took a step back. Her fingers unclipped the holster. "I'm going to need you to step out of the vehicle." "For checking my GPS?" he asked, raising an eyebrow. "You're on private land," she said sharply. "Known area for illegal dumping. You fit the profile." "The profile?" he repeated. No answer. Only a hand moving closer to her sidearm. Carlton knew the look in her eyes. He'd seen it in war zones and congressional hearings alike, the kind that didn't want truth, only dominance. But he stepped out. Not because he feared her. Because he knew how fast situations like this could burn. "I'll step out," he said evenly. "But I want to be clear, I've done nothing wrong." "You're being uncooperative," she fired back. "I've complied with every word you said." But it didn't matter. She walked him to the back of the car. No backup. No body cam. Just her orders and the silence of the woods. He tried again. "Ma'am, I'm a federal officer. My ID is in the car. If you allow." "I said hands on the trunk," she barked. Then she grabbed his arm, spun him around, slammed his palms onto the metal, kicked his feet apart. And in that moment, the forest was no longer quiet. From the road, a pickup slowed. A woman inside rolled down her window, phone in hand. A teenager in the back was already filming. No one stepped in, but they saw it. The way the man didn't flinch. The way she didn't pause to ask a single question. Because Officer Wilburn didn't know who she was dealing with. Not yet. But she would. And when she found out, the badge on her chest wouldn't be enough to shield her from what was coming. Her grip tightened, fingers curling into the fabric of his sleeve like she wanted to leave a mark. Carlton didn't resist. His breathing stayed slow, measured, not out of fear, but discipline. Years of it. This wasn't his first time being underestimated. But what chilled him wasn't the aggression, it was her confidence. The way she acted like his silence meant permission. "I don't consent to a search," he said clearly. Wilburn didn't respond. She was already moving around him, looking into the back seat. "You're military, right?" she said without turning. "You people usually are." Carlton blinked. "You people." Still nothing. She pulled out her radio, voice low and laced with nerves. "Suspicious male. Possibly armed. Requesting backup. County Road 19. The words hung in the air like a spark. Carlton turned his head slightly. "I am not carrying a weapon." But the accusation was out there now. And so was the camera. Still recording, still zoomed in from the roadside. The teenager had stepped out of the pickup, now standing with his father, quiet but focused. The man hadn't said a word, arms crossed, jaw clenched. But his eyes said enough. "You're escalating something that doesn't need to be," Carlton said. "You don't tell me how to do my job," Wilburn snapped. "I'm asking you to do it by the book." That was the moment something shifted. Her lips curled, not into a smile, but something uglier. "Are you threatening me?" "No, ma'am. I'm advising you." Then, without warning, she reached into his back pocket and yanked out his wallet. Flipped through it quickly, too quickly to actually read, until she stopped. Her eyes paused on a card tucked behind a government ID. A Pentagon-issued security clearance. Level 4. Her jaw flexed. "Where'd you get this?" she muttered. "I earned it." 30 years of service," Carlton replied flatly. She stepped back, only half a pace, but it said everything. A moment ago, she had all the power. Now, she wasn't so sure. Still, pride wouldn't let her back down. "You could have just said that in the first place," she said stiffly. "I did." Her cheeks flushed, but she reached for anything to cling to. "You still can't park here." "I wasn't parked. I was pulled over, adjusting my route." They stood there in silence, the woods buzzing with tension. She turned toward her cruiser, pretending to check something on the dash. She didn't want to look at him. Not directly. But Carlton wasn't finished. "Once your backup arrives," he said, "I'd like to make a phone call." She turned back, skeptical. "You calling your lawyer?" "No," he said, voice steady. "I'm calling the Department of Defense." Her mouth opened, then closed. There was no smirk, no sarcasm, just truth. And that truth was about to make a sound that echoed all the way to the Pentagon. She didn't reply. Maybe couldn't. The words hung too heavy in the air. Department of Defense was not the punchline she expected, and certainly not from a man she had just cuffed without cause. The sirens were still a faint murmur in the distance, but they were drawing closer, fast. Officer Wilburn's shoulders stiffened as she turned toward her cruiser, retreating behind the shield of blinking lights and static-laced radio calls. Carlton watched her through the reflection in the rear window. She was pacing now, checking her phone, glancing back at him, then to the bystanders still filming with phones held high like shields. 3 cars had pulled off the road now. No one was talking, just watching, waiting. She wasn't thinking like a cop anymore. She was reacting like someone cornered by their own actions. "Turn around," she barked suddenly. Carlton didn't move. "I've already identified myself. You're still interfering with a lawful investigation." "I'm standing here, unarmed, compliant." She lunged again, grabbing his wrist and twisting it behind his back. Metal snapped tight against his skin. The cuffs bit hard. Gasps rippled from the roadside. The teenager moved closer. His dad finally spoke. Not loud, but firm. "This is all being recorded." Carlton didn't flinch. "Everything matters," he said, voice low but steady. Wilburn didn't answer. She pushed him toward her cruiser, each step more forceful than the last. Carlton didn't resist. His boots slid over the gravel, crunching like bones under pressure. She shoved him into the back seat without a word. No Miranda rights. No explanation. From the road, the man who had been silent spoke again. His voice was calm but full of steel. "You're gonna regret this." Wilburn snapped. "Mind your business, sir." "I am," the man said. "This is my business now." She slammed the door shut, her face flushed, not from authority, but from unraveling control. Carlton sat in the back, breathing slow, eyes steady. Not panicked, focused. Every tick of the second hand in his mind was a calculation. 1, 2, 3. His wrists burned, but he ignored the pain. That wasn't the real wound here. Across the road, the teenager zoomed in on the back seat. "It says U.S. Army," he whispered to his father. "Stars too. You got that?" the man asked. "Yeah," the boy replied, voice shaking with something close to awe. Everything. Then came the low growl of tires on gravel. Not sirens. Not cruisers. 3 black SUVs. No markings. Tinted windows darker than legal. The kind of cars that don't just arrive, they descend. The kind that don't ask questions. Wilbur's head whipped toward the sound. The lead SUV stopped with precision just ahead of her cruiser. The doors opened in perfect sync. Out stepped 2 men in suits and then him. Colonel Errol Gaines. Full army dress. Stripes, medals, posture that carved silence into air. He didn't hesitate. He walked straight past Wilburn, straight past the stunned deputies, and opened the back door himself. "Sir," Gaines said, calm but tight. "You all right?" Carlton nodded once. "Fine. Just bruised pride." Gaines turned toward the crowd of uniforms and civilians. And in that moment, every camera phone, every whisper, every ounce of tension in the air shifted. Colonel Gaines didn't raise his voice, but somehow, it cut through the summer air like a blade. "Who's in charge here?" Deputy Boyd raised a hand. "I've been on scene 10 minutes, he said. His voice was even, but there was grit behind it. That officer initiated the stop. Gaines didn't bother with introductions. He turned to Wilburn. "Do you know who that man is?" She straightened her spine, trying to summon some form of authority. "He didn't provide proper ID." Gaines blinked. "He gave you his name. His title. You held his Pentagon ID. That man is a 3-star general, and you put him in cuffs." Wilburn opened her mouth, but the words stalled. He refused to comply. "No," Gaines said, calm now, dangerous in its restraint. "He refused to kneel." For a moment, no one moved. The crowd of onlookers behind the barricade of police cruisers had grown. More cars had stopped. More phones raised. The internet was already watching. Gaines glanced at Boyd. "We'll handle this from here." Boyd nodded once and backed away without another word. Carlton stepped out of the cruiser on his own, his wrists raw but steady. He didn't look at Wilburn. He didn't have to. She was folding in on herself now, slowly realizing what it meant to cuff someone with that much power and that much calm. "Would you like to press charges, sir?" Gaines asked. Carlton turned to look at her, then at the crowd, some still filming, others just stunned. "Not yet," he said quietly. "Let the public see. Let it speak for itself." Gaines gave a slow nod. "Copy that." It didn't take long before the sheriff himself arrived. Roger Nix. Late 60s, tall, heavy-limbed, with a kind of voice that had ended bar fights before they started. He pulled up in a dusty pickup, lights off, and stepped out into a scene that was already spiraling into something national. "Someone want to tell me what the hell is going on?" he said, not shouting, just announcing. Gaines met him halfway. "Sheriff Nix, Colonel Errol Gaines. One of your deputies unlawfully detained a federal general." Nix's eyes moved to Carlton, then back to Wilburn. "Tracy," he said low and gravelly, "that true?" Wilburn stammered. He refused to comply. His car looked suspicious. "I followed protocol." "Did you run his plates?" "No." "Check the ID?" I didn't think it was real." Sheriff Nix sighed. "Long and heavy. That man could have had you fired with one phone call. He didn't. That should tell you who he is." She didn't respond. Just stood there, shoulders up, jaw tight. "Hand over your badge and weapon," Nix said finally. "You're on immediate leave." Wilburn looked like she might collapse. "Sheriff, that's not a request." With trembling fingers, she unpinned her badge, unholstered her weapon, and placed both in his outstretched hand. He didn't even look at her. Just turned to the crowd. "This ain't how we treat people in my county." No one clapped. They didn't need to, because in that silence, the story had already shifted, and now the whole world was listening. By the next morning, the footage was everywhere. The teen who filmed it, Miles Reardon, uploaded the clip without edits, without music, without commentary. Just raw, unfiltered truth. A black man in cuffs, calm and composed, and an officer unraveling in real time. In less than 12 hours, the video had over 2 million views. The hashtags trended fast. Hashtag General Hayes. Hashtag profiling on camera. Hashtag This is America. News vans lined the shoulders of Highway 280. Their satellite dishes pointed toward the sky like they were waiting for lightning to strike again. But the real storm had already passed. And what remained was the aftermath. The questions, the reckoning, the sudden collective need to answer what had been caught on film. The sheriff's office issued a sterile statement. We are reviewing the matter internally. But the public wasn't interested in internal. They wanted sunlight. They wanted names. They wanted answers. And Carlton Hayes? He didn't hold a press conference. He didn't tweet. He didn't post a carefully crafted note. He just drove back to Fort Benning, his hand sore, his silence deliberate. But silence, as he knew well, had a weight. 3 days later, he stood before a quiet group of veterans at a church hall in Columbus, Georgia. No cameras. No microphones. Just folding chairs and coffee in styrofoam cups. Someone recorded it on their phone anyway. "I've never been more disrespected than I was on that roadside," Carlton said. "But I've also never been more certain of who I am." He paused. Let the silence stretch. "I didn't stay calm because I wasn't angry. I stayed calm because I've carried that anger long enough to know it won't serve me. Not like dignity does. Not like decency does." He didn't need to raise his voice. The room felt every word. Meanwhile, Sheriff Nix moved quickly. The investigation concluded with what the public already knew. Officer Tracy Wilburn had acted with excessive force, failed protocol, and abused her authority. She was fired. But off the record, Nix said something different to his deputies. "She got caught doing something we all knew she'd been doing. That's what should really shame us." And that struck a chord. Across Georgia, high schools hosted forums on authority and respect. Small-town newspapers ran op-eds about race and power. And in Schley County, every new recruit to the sheriff's department was now required to complete implicit bias training. As for Miles, the teen behind the camera, he started a YouTube channel, Truth on Record. His first video was titled, "I didn't know who he was, but I knew it was wrong." It got 500,000 views in a week. Carlton watched it from his office one night. Alone. Quiet. When it ended, he didn't smile. He didn't sigh. He just stood up, stepped outside, and looked at the sky. Soft pink, warm and open. Because in the end, what changed the world wasn't his rank. It wasn't his stars. It was how he stood still while everyone else watched. And sometimes, that's enough. Not to win, but to begin.